the Pentagon has different rings because it's kind of like a hub and spoke format. The A ring is in the middle, the very center ring.
Okay.
The E ring is the head honchos, the big dogs.
On the outside.
On the outside.
What does that say about the government, that the outside ring, which holds more people, has head honchos? And
it says that the actual workers are protected. The leaders,
or that there's just
the leaders go first.
There's too many leaders and not enough people doing the work.
Yeah.
All right, so first, a lot of the stuff that we've done, there's these acronyms that get thrown around. There's COs, PMs, SESs, 1102s.
Yeah.
They refer to people, but I don't know, like, what is the structure of, like, that government contracting office? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there's so many acronyms that even people are acronyms. Crazy. So 1102, I'll start with 1102. So there's job series in the government.
Okay.
And I think it's always 4 digits. And that's basically describes your function.
Okay.
I think everything has a job series. But 1102 is the contracting officer.
Okay.
And then 1101, I believe, is policy. And then there's other like series for program managers, and cost and budget has a series. So it's just the way you kind of put a label on someone, remind them that they're just a pawn and a cog in the government system. Yeah. So when you leave, you give them a goodbye party and then replace them with another 1102. Okay. It's just a number.
So 1102 and a contracting officer, CO.
CO is contracting
kind of the
officer.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, so we can talk a little bit about what a contracting office. So we can start with acquisition. They have a term a lot they call big A and little a acquisition.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, like the FAR will do this, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. When it talks about acquisition, it defines it as the art of buying something, and they're really limiting it to the contracting piece of acquisition, just buying. So another word for contracting is procurement. They call that little a acquisition. Big A acquisition.
So what's the difference between procurement and acquisition?
So
is there a difference?
In little a acquisition, they're talking about procurement. So the art of procuring something.
Getting something.
Yeah, okay. Procuring it. If you define getting something beyond buying, to actually get something, really to get something from a company, you're defining it through requirements definition, which has its own review process. You're buying it, so that's the procurement piece.
Okay.
But then you're delivering it, and you're engaging in kind of like project management or program management of the whole process of getting that requirement into the hands of the end user.
Okay.
There's a lot of functions involved in that, not just the CO. The CO just plays a part, the contracting officer.
Okay.
There you have program managers, PMs.
Okay.
That's a big A. So big A acquisition is just the overall, it's zooming out of the whole acquisition process. Okay. You have test and evaluators, people who test.
T&E?
T&E, yeah, in the DoD environment.
I should have had that on my questions.
T&E, yeah.
Okay.
You have... in the FAR actually defines the acquisition team as including all the big A acquisition people. They call them technical representatives, end users. They mention as part of the acquisition team. Contractors are part of it, but yeah. So the big A acquisition, you'll have a lot of different job series that are involved in actually getting something defined, the requirement approved, which in the DoD it goes through a whole requirements review board process where you go through, if it's a big program, you'll go through various steps in a major system acquisition or program where you're doing like an analysis of alternatives, you're coming up with your capability document, then you go through like phase 1, phase 2, or milestones A, B, C. It's just a crazy, drawn out, long process. This is for like buying planes.
Okay.
That's the acquisition process, and the contracting piece is just a part of that.
Okay.
And so the contracting officer is not the leader of that effort. The leader of the effort's program manager. That's the person who just owns that whole program of record.
So like a program manager would be building a plane, and a contracting officer would be buying the parts.
Buying the parts, settling the contracts with the contractors to provide the plane.
Okay.
The program manager would be involved in basically herding the cats, putting everyone together, getting the engineers. The program manager probably does not have the technical expertise in all these areas. So they're going to be getting requirements documents possibly from various technical subject matter experts, working with lawyers, working with their upper level management to make sure things are on track, just really basically just managing the whole project, and program, is associated with the program, but it's really any type of acquisition that involves defining, buying, and delivering something can have a PM, doesn't have to be an official program manager, product manager or project manager, some kind of person to see through the whole. We have videos on that, training to PMs, and they're not contracting people. They work with contracting, but they're really the ones to make sure that the thing that's being bought is delivered. And the reason why they're an acquisition role is because we're still buying something, but we're working with industry to have something delivered. So you mentioned SES. I'll just mention some of the other, like the structure.
Yeah, what is a hierarchy? Is it a hierarchy?
Yeah, it is. So in the government, they have something called the GS scale. Have you heard of that? The general schedule. And it starts at I think technically it starts at GS5. I don't think anyone comes in at a GS5 though. I think most people can come in as like a GS9, that's considered an intern. So it goes all the way up to GS15.
Okay.
That's the highest, the general schedule. It's almost like, Boy Scouts. You're Boy Scout, right?
I wasn't, but I know you were.
I was Eagle Scout.
I grew up with uncles, and my dad were Eagle Scouts. So.
Okay, I thought you were going to say you grew up cool, and that's why you weren't a Boy Scout. But
yeah, I wish.
But like the Boy Scouts, it's like, you get to first class, second class, and then the Eagle is like the very top, and then so it's kind of like, that's probably a bad analogy. Anyway, so the GS stops at 15, and then after that you become as a senior exec. You go into the senior executive service. Okay, and that's SES.
SES. Okay,
and an SES has different levels to it, and those are the people in usually in the, here's another little thing for Pentagon culture. The people who are the Pentagon has different rings.
You started telling me about that one time, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and actually it's really cool. It's one of the largest, I think it may still be the largest office in the world.
Okay.
And I think this is still true. I forgot, I don't know if I have the minutes right, but you should be able to get anywhere, because it's kind of like a hub and spoke format. You should be able to get anywhere from point A to point B, anywhere in the Pentagon, in about 7 minutes, I think.
Wow. Or
something like that. It's a big building, but it's actually sort of organized pretty well, even though they added rings and corridors and it's made it messier. But the A ring is at the very end. Usually is it the A ring is at the end? No, sorry. The A ring is in the middle, the very center ring.
Okay.
And that's where you go to the A ring and you walk around because it's the smaller circle. And then you branch out to the different corridors you go out.
Okay.
The E ring is the head honchos, the big dogs.
On the outside.
On the outside.
Okay.
If you look at their offices, you've got a really cool E-ring office if your glass is green in the office, because there's like a special bulletproof protected glass. So it's not like their view's great. It's like this weird tinted green.
What does that say about the government, that the outside ring, which holds more people, has head honchos? And
it says that the actual workers are protected. The leaders,
or that there's just
the leaders go first.
There's too many leaders and not enough people doing the work.
Yeah, actually, there's a story. I hope the story's true. I think it is. I like to tell it. I think it is true. But did I tell you about when the Russians so in the middle of the Pentagon, there's this courtyard and has this restaurant in the middle. And it used to have a hot dog stand. Apparently, I don't remember there ever being a hot dog stand, but and during the Cold War, like in the 60s, there was a lot of Russian aerial surveillance on the Pentagon, and they started detecting patterns, and they were trying to figure out, because at one point, several workers would meet in the middle, the Pentagon, the courtyard, like between 11 and 1, and then they would just disperse. I'm like, what's the secret meeting? Anyway, it was the hot dog stand.
Lunch.
It was lunch. Yeah. In many cases, all of these different roles in the acquisition team, contracting officer, program manager, even the people who test, or they're all kind of sometimes in different offices with completely different hierarchies, which is different chains of command. So it makes that challenging when you're trying to like work we talk a lot about working with software, like in a balanced team, working in iterations where the team just needs to be together the whole time. That kind of op tempo. That's challenging in the current government environment. I'll say definitely DoD, but I'd say the rest of the government as well, because there's just a lot of different silos, different hierarchies, and to get everyone together who needs to be like, you're picking the CO and they have to answer to their own bosses. It just makes things complicated and weird. Okay. And the government's not really set up right now, particularly Department of Defense, for that kind of balanced team, unless there's a very tight program office that has all the functions there where they can work together iteratively,
But they're all 7 minutes apart from each other, right? So,
well, the Pentagon, but then the DoD has offices everywhere.
Oh, that's true.
So I worked at, the Air Force, Andrews Air Force Base, which was like on the other side of the Potomac in Maryland.
Okay.
And my customers were, like the people that I worked with as a contracting officer, people I was making contracts for, were at the Pentagon. So I had to either, don't talk to them, which was standard operations for a lot of people in my office.
Yeah.
Or if you really want to have that relationship with them, you get in your car, you park at Macy's across the street from the Pentagon, and you walk from Macy's to the Pentagon.
Pentagon doesn't have good parking?
Yeah, but you got to get a parking pass if you don't work there, and I never went through. It's got to get this ordeal. And it's funny, I went with someone, we always parked there's a Macy's parking lot there, the Pentagon Mall. You park there, you walk over, there's a little tunnel. And I told one of my people on my team, we were going to a meeting, we parked at Macy's, I was like, this is going to be something I'm going to tell my grandkids future, like, when I was working at DoD, I had to park at Macy's across the street to get to the Pentagon. Yes.
And Macy's makes it into another one of our videos.
Macy's, the second appearance. We're just focusing on the contract office. So the contract office will have typically like the head of the contracting activity is probably not in that office. For a big organization, they're somewhere else as well. So they'll have a contract office manager or the director of contracting for that whole office. They'll be at the top. Usually they're looking at upper level reviews. In a healthy office, they've delegated most of that down, so they're not reviewing much. In what I consider to be an unhealthy office, they want to look at everything. So
who's they?
The director, the head of the contract office, or they take the threshold down really low, like anything over 1,000 or anything over 10,000, I need to look at.
Yeah.
So there's that. Actually, let me actually work from the bottom up. That'd probably be, let's follow the story of how this happens. So when there's a need, the program office, if it's something big, or let's just say the requirement owner needs something. Let's just make it simple. No program of record, like any government office, State Department, Defense Department, there is a purchase request is what it's usually called, like a PR. And they send it to the contracting office. I need, let's do the volleyball. Remember the volleyball net example?
Yeah, let's do a volleyball.
I need a volleyball net, a tall one, unusually tall volleyball net. All right, and so they'll write that down, volleyball net, and then they'll write down like usually. So a purchase request will be attached to funding usually, like this is how much money I have for this, and they'll have the line of accounting on there.
Who's writing this down?
This is the requirement owner the requirement or the person who kind of needs the thing to be bought.
Okay.
The budget adds the line of account, and the purchase request, like, okay, we have this in our budget. We're going to put this much towards it. So that, like, if the volleyball net says, I've got $10,000 for this volleyball net, pretty high quality volleyball net. It may end up, the contracting officer may end up awarding under that $10,000. Once you get the PR, the contracting officer, that's the money. And you can just award the contract. You put that line of account, almost like you're putting a credit card, and then boom. As long as you're awarding below or at that amount, you're good to go. So a lot of times the purchase request will come in with a lot more money than it ends up being negotiated and bought. You can't award over what's on the amount then. You got to go back and say, I need more money.
After an RFI?
After an RFI?
Is that why you would need more money?
Oh, you mean if you do like market research to find out? You could. You could at that stage. A lot of times it's you do the competition and you get the prices. You're at kind of like finalized contract award.
Okay.
You get your final negotiated price and it's like $10,000 and $10,500.
Okay.
You pull up that price, you look at the PR you have and like, whoops, this is a little over. You got to go back and get $500 more dollars. Okay. So the PR comes in with that line of account, and it goes to the contract office. And then usually someone takes that and they assign the PR to one of the contract teams. So they'll assign it to a contract officer. Now, contract officer will have, the contract officer is the person with the warrants to actually obligate the money and create the contract. No one else who doesn't have a warrant is able to do that. It's a special position. You have to go through an exam usually with agencies and get your warrant. There's different types of warrants. It can be unlimited or whatever. So anyway, the contracting officer usually has some help from contract specialists. These people are often incredibly smart, talented individuals that just don't necessarily have any desire to get a warrant. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not that way, but a lot of specialists are. So anyway, there can be a contract officer who has like 5 specialists on their team working multiple contracts. Okay. So usually when something comes a contracting officer's way, like a PR, they'll look at volleyball net. Oh, this is perfect for Scott. You're my contract specialist. I'll give it to you. Like, let's work this. So the contract specialist takes it and starts working. How am I going to get this net? You start doing your market research as the specialist. Usually the contract officer may get involved, but the specialist does a lot of that work.
Okay.
And then the contract officer will sign a lot of the strategies. Say, yeah, this is good. This is good. And then the specialist will usually go through the competition, send out the solicitation that the contract officer signs and all that. So, and then the really challenging part about that is if you just get a PR and it just says volleyball net and there's no context to that, then you're going to have to go back to the PM or that requirements owner and say, hey, you got to give me more. By the way, the person who sent the PR is usually going to be the contract officer's representative, the person who's going to the person who's going to be kind of monitoring performance. Okay. And if it just comes in as a PR and they call it a PR package, no package, then the CEO is going to go back and say, like, you're not giving me anything. And that creates a major source of tension in offices. The tension between the contracting officer and the PM type role, and the PM getting in. And we've done a lot of videos on that. Yeah, like the Farlingo commercial. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe this would get done faster if you actually submitted the requirements package I asked for.
In order for me to help you, I need your subject matter expertise on this. I don't know the things you know.
Yeah, but you're the paperwork person. That kind of stuff is your job.
I would like to do this for you, but I need your expertise on the contracting paperwork.
I don't have the time to help you.
I do have time to help you.
And at that very last discussion.
Yeah.
So in the PR package, there's like market research report. There's an IGC, there's an independent government cost estimate, IGCE, that the requirement owner needs to come up with, not so there's just a lot of like, whose responsibility is it? PM usually doesn't know how to prepare some of these packages. CO does. That's a whole nother video actually we could do, is talk about that whole tension involved in just getting these documents over to the contracting office so they can make an informed decision on the contract they need to create.
Yeah.
Sometimes in many offices, the contract officer writes the work statement. The work statement needs to be included too for service contracts, not volleyball nets, but that's not a good position to be in, where the contract officer is writing the work statement. That's probably not a good idea, but it happens all the time because the requirement owner just refuses to do it or is unable to do it. Someone's got to do it. Anyway.
Okay.
So barring that, a package comes in and they're able to make their contract. Then it goes through a series of reviews up the chain in the contract office. One is in the solicitation phase. It's got to go up a whole 7-layer bean dip of reviews all the way to the top. And here's the big point, right, to this that just really grinds my gears. The more the contract office has, now sometimes there's agency regulations that affect the whole agency, but typically the contracting office has the complete flexibility to make that review process as stringent or as not stringent as it needs to be. And in so many offices, they just make it so incredibly complex. Like if it's this value, it needs to go up to policy and legal, 2 different roles. It's crazy. So like there's policy people who work in a contract office and they just look and make sure all the rules are being followed. That's what they should be doing. A lot of times they put their own opinions into this document. This poor CEO just gets their solicitation ripped to shreds. And then they do like, they won't let the review pass into the next level of review until they push it back down, until you've fixed their problems. And sometimes you fix it, they're pretty vague, like change this. And you take it back up and they're like, not happy. And it's like this ping pong match between these 2 layers of review. It's incredibly frustrating. Okay. My opinion is that it's just a really good dose of job security for that person. They want to feel like that they're important and needed. And so if they don't red pen all over a document and they just let it go, then they don't feel special.
Okay.
That's
do they have
point of view.
Do they have some responsibility though if they were to release it, it come back on them that they didn't do a good job also?
Yeah, possibly. But here's the funny part about that is at the end of the day, the person accountable on protests is not that policy person. It's going to be the contract officer who's accountable. So what the policy person will say, ironically, is that they're protecting that CO, when the reality is a lot of policy will hurting the CO by making this incredibly complicated process, changing, musts to shalls and little things like that.
I remember in one of our videos you said that, I think it was that lawyers are advisors.
Yeah.
So same thing with policy?
They should be. Okay. It depends on the contract office though. What should happen, in my opinion, for the contracting officer is the one, and this is in the FAR. We talked about this in one of our videos. The CO should be the one ultimately making the decision, and in my opinion, that also includes how the thing is written.
So, does this mean that a CO should be empowered to make the decisions in his or her area of responsibility? Can't the supervisor veto the decision? Can legal counsel move beyond legal advice and veto decisions? Isn't that why we have upper-level reviews? The FAR says no.
The review should be is a whole bunch of series of good advice that they can either take or they can say noted. And that's what I did as a CEO. Some of the stuff that came back, I'd be like, oh yeah, good catch. Sometimes I'd just say, all right, noted. And I'd note that in the file. And that's the way it should happen. So noted with legal, noted with, because again, the CO, a really responsible CO that can be trusted should say, thanks for the advice, but I'm the decision maker and I'm going to go ahead and do it this way.
Can we start editing videos that way?
What's that?
Can I start editing videos that way?
Where I give you advice and you're like,
noted.
You're like, noted. You probably want to. A pretty low dollar value. We're not talking about planes and tanks here. We're talking about maybe $2 million IT services requirement, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money, gets 5 layers of review before it even goes out to solicitation. That's unacceptable to me, right? So this is Will's opinion coming out. But and there's a lot of thought leaders in the space, like in the Air Force, for example, who pushed some of that down. But you have a big force in the, I'm pick on the DoD for a minute, but in the DoD bureaucracy and institution who resists putting the power in the hands of the contracting officer. Sometimes it's lack of trust, sometimes it's whatever, So that, circling back to your question, that culture really depends on people like the SES and the leadership to give the CO that power. If they are power hungry or full of pride or lack of trust in their underlings, then they're going to do all these layers of review and things are going to be real slow. They're going to demoralize their staff. Nothing's going to get out. And those contracting offices will turn into sweatshops because they're spending their whole time re-adjudicating comments, and that's their whole existence.
So the SES at the top of the heap sets the tone for the rest.
For a lot of offices, yeah. They can be the ones to say, this is the culture it needs to be. Okay. Things pushed down. And the funny thing about that is if you push trust down to the contract officer, it's scary at first, especially if you have an office of contract officers who should not be contract officers. That's the other problem is a lot of offices, you have no reason to trust them. And you need to have all these layers of review because they're pretty bad at their jobs. And so you got to have policy and legal rewriting these people's work because they should not have a warrant in the first place.
Yeah.
So, but
maybe they're good at their job and they just don't feel like putting the work into it because they know they're going to have to do it 4 times.
Right. That's true. So that's the other thing.
Sounding more and more like video editing.
Man, I feel like we need to have a conversation. If the leadership were to put that trust in the CO, there's a couple things that could happen with that. They could get in a lot of trouble because they find out the COs are actually making decisions that aren't good. Mm-hmm. And then again, they're the ones accountable. At the end of the day, they're the ones like the lawyers aren't going to get in trouble. And many protests I've read shamefully, some that I've read, the lawyers even like throw the COs under the COs are the ones, like everything points at the contract officer on this decision. Mm-hmm. So why are you going to, it's like that thing about like, why are you sending soldiers to war if they can't even vote? It's like, why are you making them accountable for all this stuff and you're not giving them any sort of power and authority? So, I give leadership a really hard time with contracting offices by not trusting COs when they should. But at the same time, when contracting officers, complain about that, my question to them is, are you the kind of professional that has built up that trust? If you build trust with your leaders, they'll give you top cover if you resist legal, if you resist policy. Mm-hmm. It works. Even in the worst contract office, the worst culture and environment, you can show yourself, I truly believe this, to be someone that can be trusted in that office. Otherwise, get out of there. Get out of that office. Go work somewhere else. There's so many toxic contract offices out there. So that's the structure of the contract office. 35-minute answer. Speed round.
Well, so my next question may build off of this. We'll see. So we talk a lot about in our videos kind of that buying process. Yeah. And I feel like we have that kind of covered, but there's like this whole other section, and we've covered it a little bit, but like what does the post-award world look like for the office? Yeah.
So this is funny because I feel like as we go more and more into emerging technology, the contract, we talk about the terminology pre-award, post-award, and award. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the pre-award phase is going to shrink in the award phase. I think we're going to find ways of doing more rapid contracting. Okay. But the what happens after that contract, that is going to be a major focus. And in contracting offices, it's really not. So, like, let's say the volleyball net example, we do the whole competition, we finally award the contract, That goes to a volleyball net contractor. That's pretty straightforward. In the contract, it's like the delivery address. You know, where it needs, when it needs to be shipped, and then bada bing, it's there.
Yeah.
Someone's waiting to check. Supplies, pretty straightforward. Services, kind of different story. So after the award, right after the award, there's usually a contract kickoff where all the parties get together. The contractor will have a PM, a belly button, and they'll be the person there, kind of. And then the government typically will present kickoffs, even though they don't have to, and talk through all like invoicing stuff. How's this going to work? How am I going to be invoiced? And then in that kickoff, they talk about how this is going to go down. Like, remember your deliverables. Remember, like, we need this by this date. Kind of the phases of performance, and then that needs to be carried out and followed through.
Okay.
In most situations, that's the last time anyone's going to see the CO. CO disappears.
So CO's done. They like, I bought it, on to the next thing.
On to the next thing. See, a lot of CO is just a procurement, pre-award. They call them a PCO, procurement COs. They're just knocking out contracts.
Okay.
And then they really don't stay for the tail,
Okay. Which makes sense. Their job is to do contracts.
They're knocking it out.
Contracts done.
That was a lot of what my role. So you slither off into the dark recesses of your cubicle, never to be seen again. And then the core. That's why you need to represent. So that's why there needs to be a contracting officer's representative.
Does the core work for the CO, or does the CO work for the core?
Neither work for each other.
Okay.
The core usually has a completely different boss, chain of command.
Okay.
But they're appointed by the CO. There's got to be some kind of delegation.
Okay.
So it's almost like the warrant. They use their warrant to delegate an aspect to the core. And there's a bunch of things that are. This is in FAR Part 1.7. I don't know. We can check that.
You're usually right on these things. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, we'll see. 1.7? Please. We can do different shots. So I go, please. No! Please. Yes. Okay. So, anyway, there's different things that a core can and can't do. And the one thing they absolutely cannot do is act in a way with the contractor where they commit more funds from the government to the contractor. That's called an unauthorized commitment. And
What's the gist of a core's job?
monitor the performance of the contract.
So after award,
After
they
award,
just make
it's a
sure.
post-award function.
Okay.
There is in really big. Well, let me go back to the CO for a second. We'll get to the core. The CO slinks back into the dark recesses of their cubicle. But any type of issue that comes up, invoice issue, legal issue, CO is back on the job. So I spent a lot of my time working with contractors post-award. So you're still there.
Okay.
And technically,
Because you're still responsible for it.
yeah, and technically you're there the whole time. You're just being represented by the Corps.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, the reality of it is that the CEO probably spends most of his or her time focusing on that next pre-award.
Mm-hmm.
There are in big programs, big contracts, big requirements, a PCO, procurement contracting officer, and then an ACO, an administrative contracting officer. And that handoff happens where they get the contract, and the ACO is not part of the pre-award activities at all. They're just inheriting and then they can do modifications and stuff. That's another post-award function. You do a lot of mods, like if you're, busting the seams on the threshold or whatever. But let me talk about unauthorized commitments. So the Corps. So an unauthorized commitment is when, so the only person that can obligate the government to pay funds, right, to a company. Say, we will pay you this. That's an obligation. Like if we are obligated now to pay these funds. We may not pay them yet. That's through the invoice process. But the contract is the promise that we will. CEO is the only person that can do that. However, lots of stuff can happen on the job site.
Yeah.
Things here and there. I mean, the typical examples of like an installation. There's a guy there's a contractor who makes sure the pavement, like a groundskeeping. Colonel comes up, sees the path isn't as good as it needs to be, and goes, hey, come here. Goes to the contractor, like, clean this up. And the contractor says, well, that's not in my scope, but okay.
Okay.
And then they do it, and then they charge for that thing that the colonel just asked them to do. Colonel, by the way, not anywhere involved in the whole process. Maybe it's just someone who's high ranking, but just wants to have the installation look nice. That's an unauthorized commitment because that needed to be done. The government is not allowed to accept voluntary services from contractors. Like even in our company, like ASI, we can't just like make videos for free, for a client. That would be voluntary service.
We can't. What
we do.
about what are we?
We do.
Is our whole channel illegal?
Yeah, it's illegal. It's a voluntary service. No, I guess I guess we're doing a social media thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not specifically delivering videos every week to a particular agency. It's just like, come on, come all. Here are stuff.
And it's open to the public.
Open to the public.
This is not for the government. This is
for This is for the world.
This is for the world.
This is for humanity, for mankind.
There we go.
Yeah. So an unauthorized commitment happens when the government, someone who shouldn't have, commits the government into money that they don't have unauthorized. By the way, the COs can do unauthorized commitment too by obligating money that they don't have a line of accounting for. Like that's not so they got to watch out for that.
So is anybody held responsible for?
Yeah. So the government is not entitled to that money. So actually, that's my first FAR thing.
But we don't pay the contractor for those.
No, unless it's ratified.
Ratified is you just accept it.
Yeah.
The contracting officer has to ratify.
So they'll bill you for it, and you can say
you can put the money in there and say and usually. The person who did the unauthorized commitment gets a little bit of a slap on the wrist.
Okay.
You can decide not to ratify, but someone's paying usually, right? Like so the contractor can bring a claim and say, "Listen, I got to get paid for this. I don't care what whatever unauthorized whatever process. I did something. I need to get paid."
Yeah.
And so someone's got to pay. There is a possibility that person has to pay from their own. That's the worst case scenario is they pay. Yeah, that's pretty extreme.
That is pretty extreme.
Pretty extreme. Maybe if it's just like a landscaping where they fixed the path, we're talking about like a multi-billion-dollar contract. That
calling up the colonel and being like, "Hey,
hey colonel, hey sir,
remember that time you asked that guy to pave the path?
Yeah, we're gonna need $500."
Yeah.
So that can happen, especially if they're repeat offenders. There was one incident that I had where I was close to not signing a ratification because I was so sick of this happening. It was a repeat offender. Anyway, so that can happen in the post-award process. But really, that's the post-award process is the process of after the award, making sure the thing is delivered, the service is performed, and there needs to be more emphasis on that, especially with emerging technology. So, especially at the contract office, like the whole push is just to get this award out. Even with program managers and sometimes big contracts, you're just trying to get the award out. Award is out. Articles go out. Like, look what the Defense Department, whatever, and everyone's celebrating, patting yourself on the back. And then, like what happens after that? So, it's up to a core or some, and on that side to really see the services through. Of course, at that point, so much of the focus is on the contractor's responsibility. The contractor is on contract to see it through. But with AI, for example, emerging tech, that post-award involves a very tightly integrated team where the contractor's working hand in hand with the government to see through the post-award process. We really haven't perfected that in the government yet. And it's a lot easier in that case to go through the pre-award. Once that contract's out, that's where you put your money where your mouth is and actually doing the thing. It's a lot more complicated. It's a pretty short answer.
Yeah, pretty short answer.
Comparatively, yeah.
All right, so my last question is, how do these contracts end? Or do they just keep going forever?
Yeah. So the contracts end in a process called closeouts. Mm-hmm. You close the thing out. It's in part for of the FAR.
Ooh, I don't think we've talked about part 4 of the FAR yet.
Yeah, there's a reason. So part 4 is called boring. Yeah, it's called administrative matters.
Okay, that sounds boring.
Yeah, it's super boring. We don't even have our FAR. We should have mentioned that. Can we add the little?
Yeah, we'll add a
Yeah, the little ding. Can we do this? Can we try this? Can I flick it and it goes?
Let's try it. Let's try it.
Here you go. No go. So part 4. So yeah, contract closeouts are nobody wants to do those. It's just a pain. And what you're usually doing is, well, first you find out you can only close out a contract if the performance has been done. And then once the performance is done, you have to officially close it out so that it goes on the record of being closed out. And
who's doing this?
The contract office.
Okay.
Who should be doing it? AI.
AI.
So,
all right.
we have actually, we talked about Ability One before.
Mm-hmm.
Closing out contracts is a function that Ability One can do. So
Really?
you can, a lot of offices, I think, will contract that out,
Okay.
which is a super smart thing to do, I think, because it's just very painful for a contracting office to go. Usually it's like at the beginning of the fiscal year, everyone sets aside some time to do contract closeouts, and it's an incredibly menial task. That's usually when I put the headphones on. I listen to Thriller, was my go-to album.
Nice.
Every song is a gym, and I'd just be, I'd be closing out contracts, nodding my head to Beat It for 2 months. Just beat it. And the easy ones are the ones where there's no money lingering around, hanging out, one and done, boom, closed out, move on. And this, by the way, was also when we did paper file. I was closing out things with paper files, which is so annoying. You had to take it, and we had the big drawers with the paper.
Yeah.
And you close it out. And you have your whole closeout drawers, and you have to keep those closeout contracts for a certain amount of time. And then you can take them and shred them. Everything's so much easier digital now. But even digital, it's just a pain. Now, when there's lingering money, you've got to figure out where that money goes. And that gets you got to make sure that the invoices have been paid and it's been settled. And sometimes a performance has been done, but there's claims involved. The contractor still hasn't been paid. Sometimes there's contracts that have been around for like 4 or 5 years. Contractor still has not been paid and they're waiting.
How is that?
I don't know, but that's really terrible because now the contractor's suffering.
Yeah.
And in a much more meaningful way than a CEO just happened to work out a headache. So it's painful. It's the closeout process. We have it as one of our letters. This is a little teaser for my first FAR, which is coming out soon.
Soon.
To a store near you. Are we selling them yet? Probably not.
I don't think
do some giveaways.
We'll do some giveaways.
All right. Yeah.
Our first book.
Our first book. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the closeout process.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's on PYT's on Thriller, I think, isn't
I
it?
think it is, yeah.
PYT. Yeah, that's a good one.
Man.
Oh, MJ, come back to us. The evolution and progression of the contract officer can take many stages.
Okay.
Start off singing ABCs. Grandma's, what is it? I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Then you get into rock star or pop star, the pop star king, and then you start, and if you let yourself go, you start looking weird. This is really
Start
bad.
getting weird.
Start getting weird. And yeah, that's not very good, is it?
I don't know. We'll watch it back later and figure it out.
Yeah, maybe don't have your contract officer career path follow Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
maybe he's not the best example.
no. All right, we're going to do a speed round of acronyms.
All right, let's do it. This is a different video?
Maybe a different video. Maybe we'll just tag it on the end here.
Okay. And I don't know what acronyms you're doing.
You have no idea. I'm going to try to stump you maybe.
All right, stump me.
Or I'm just going to tell you ones that I haven't heard before.
Cool.
Or that I don't know.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do, dang it. You just talked about this in the video. The COTR.
Oh. Yeah, that's like a form of a core. That's contracting officer's technical representative. And so they I think that Sometimes there's no distinction. Sometimes the core is de facto technical representative. But I think it's just someone with a little bit more, let's say, engineering background or something with more knowledge of the technical aspects of complex service requirements, especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
CLIN. Clean? Clean?
CLIN.
Clean?
Yeah.
Clean.
CLIN.
Okay, clean.
Yeah. CLIN is contract line item number.
Okay.
And so a CLIN will be the contract structure. We have never talked about this before. We may not ever want to because it's pretty boring. But a contract line item is in the contract, and that's like the item, whatever, the services may be broken up into items. Like for some of the services we do, it's like videos will be a line item, training will be another one, guides and templates or whatever, so they usually represent different products or services that are associated with the same contract. And each CLIN can have a different contract type or CLIN type way of paying. CLINs can even have different lines of accounting. I'm going to throw in another acronym for you. A line of accounting is an LOA.
Okay.
Which I don't know why they call it LOA and not LOA. Seems like a missed opportunity.
All right, next one, and you probably, I'm hoping this one is said and not spelled out.
Okay.
BAFO. BAFO.
It is. Best and final offer. I think that's BAFO. Yeah. What's your BAFO?
What's your BAFO?
Yeah. Best and final offer. And negotiations.
Okay.
What's your best and final offer? Yeah.
All right.
That's when you're closing in on the deal.
Ooh, I have one that's not on my list. What about bluff? Is that an acronym or is that just a word? What's your bluff?
What's your bluff? Bottom line up front. I think that's
okay.
I think that's a DoD thing. I don't know if that's federal government. So if whoever's watching, correct us on the comments. But as kind of a military,
okay,
and a lot of PowerPoint slides, there'd be a bluff slide for generals who don't have time for the rest of the slides. It's like, just tell me, I'm with you on slide 1, and then I'm out of here, kind of thing.
I see.
So, sir, here's the bottom line up front.
That was in our Godfather.
Godfather, yeah. What's your bluff?
So what's your bluff?
My bluff is what I want is to have a guarantee. No more contract breaches.
Hey, Mike, that's what we want too. It's just going to cost you a little extra.
Oh, I think I know what that one means, but we can talk about it. Multiple award schedule. MAS. M-A-S? MAS.
Yeah.
Or MOS.
A MAS is multiple award schedule. I think the difference between, I don't know what it is, MAS or MAS. The difference between that and a multiple award contract is I think a schedule is like the federal supply schedules that we talked about, like in Part 8 of the FAR. I think you learn how to set them up in Part 38.
Mm-hmm.
We can fact check if that's 38. I think it's 38. We don't have our FAR with us, so I can't check. But I think a multiple award schedule we're talking about supply schedules.
Okay.
So different, like we talked about in an earlier video, different kind of thing than setting up multiple award contracts.
Would that be a MAC?
That's a MAC.
Okay. SBIR.
SBIR.
Saber?
SBIR.
SBIR.
That is spelled out. SBIR would be so terrible if you had to say that all the time. SBIR. No, it's SBIR.
SBIR. Okay.
Yeah. Small business. Oh my goodness. I think it's small business.
I have the answer here, but
okay, then let me know if I'm right.
okay.
I know what it is. I just don't know what the acronym is. Small Business Innovative Research? Small Business, is that right?
Innovation Research.
Innovation Research. So the SBIR program was set up specifically to streamline and small businesses from getting research dollars to prototype stuff. Air Force uses it a lot. As an example, a lot of agencies use it. I don't think it's just DoD. I think civilian agencies or non-DoD agencies do that as well. It is a program that allows small businesses to get direct funds, and there's different phases to it, like SBIR Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and the phases are in proportion to something called a TRL, Technology Readiness Level. So when you're involved in research contracts, oftentimes you're still developing something that's not ready for prime time, ready for the operational environment. And that is your technological technology readiness level. If it's low, it means it's not ready. If you're up at a higher level, it means it's ready to be packaged, sent out. So if you get a phase 1 contract for cyber, usually it's just a prototype research. If you go all the way to phase 3 is like ready to be bought. So the problem with the cyber program, or some of the challenges with the cyber program, is there ended up being a lot of phase 1 and phase 2s, like prototyping, and not a lot of shifting over to phase 3, which corresponds to what we talked about the valley of death, right? Where there's a lot of like prototyping going on the one side of the valley, but then never make it across to the actual delivery. That's like the valley is going from cyber phase 2 to phase 3. In order to cross that valley, it has nothing to do with the contractors. They're ready to get their phase 3 and deliver. It really has to do with the government just not having their act together and setting up the logistical infrastructure or getting the funding to actually take that prototype and put it into an operational environment.
Okay. And is the money for these, are these done in contracts? Are they grants?
Yeah, they're done in contracts. I think there's separate funds for cyber. And then there's separate components within agencies, like I mentioned, DFARS, which is an Air Force office that's specifically set up. I believe that all they do is cybers, that they're set up to award cyber contracts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great program for small business.
All right. SSEB.
SSEB. I think we talked about this.
Is that
Yeah, let's see. What?
SEB?
Oh, yes. I thought you were going to try to,
No, I looked them up. I know what they actually stand for, but
Okay.
That doesn't mean I know what they mean.
Okay, gotcha. I wish it was SEB. That'd be really
SEB.
cool.
What is it? Just
SEB.
SSEB?
SSEB. Source Selection Evaluation Board.
Okay.
So that's the board that when all the in a competition, when all the proposals come in, this is the board of people who are going to be reviewing the proposals and giving technical evaluations, past performance evaluations, and giving all those ratings and packaging it up to the source selection decision authority, the contract officer, typically, for lower dollar value. And they take all the ratings and they make their decision. So the board is the one that gives those ratings. So they're going to be usually they're going to be very, very familiar with the requirement that we're trying to buy. Okay. So we're going to want, like we're doing a competition for a volleyball net, we're going to want volleyball net experts on our board. Okay. So they can sniff out the kind of the baloney that's in the proposals.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I got one more.
All
right. Well, I'll throw this one out here because it's in the news. FOIA,
yeah. So FOIA is Freedom of Information Act. And that act protects Americans who want to know about government activities. And there are certain things that the government must disclose. That's to help increase transparency in government operations. What you do is you submit a FOIA request to get that information. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is so big with contracts is because you can request a contract. And I've done FOIA requests before. I did that a lot in my job. Contractors, especially those who lost, would ask to see that they would do a FOIA request for the contract that was awarded. And it's a heavily redacted document.
Okay.
Sometimes the document just full of black bars. Okay. Just across. It has like one piece of information that's like an address. No, the address would be redacted. So, yeah, the award date.
Okay.
So you redact the. I always wanted to redact less, of course, because you want to be transparent as you can. But
you would get FOIA requests.
I would get them as a contracting.
Okay.
In the government, yeah. And then I would process them with someone would help me, like a attorney or whatever. There's usually every office has like a FOIA person who handles FOIA requests.
Okay.
But you can redact too much, I believe, and really not be helpful to the person. Like, why would you just disclose? Just disclose what you can. Don't bring anything to the surface that's classified. But yeah, anyway, usually I hate to say it, and a lot of times they go through the whole process of doing a FOIA request, and we over redact and give them a document full of black bars. We did a thing on that.
Do they have
the murder mystery.
Do they have any recourse if they think you over redacted?
Yeah, I guess they can go back.
A FOIA?
A FOIA. I want to know about those black bars. Yeah, maybe they can appeal a FOIA.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
But-
that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
I think we made it through another one.
Till next time. Subscribe.
Which will be next month for you, but 5 minutes for us.
Yes.
All right, next
the
time.
future.
Ah.